Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, we have a pretty extensive addendum this evening. I apologize for that. My preference is to not have very many items on the addendum, but due to the timing of the board meeting and when the agenda and packet went out last week, being close proximity to the holiday, and then also with our 2 days of snow interruption last week, it had an effect on what things were in the original agenda. So I'll kind of go down the line of recommended actions. Number 1 on the consent agenda is approved purchase exceeding $5,000 for the purchase of 1 complete competition set of volleyball standards and related equipment from MF Athletics for Southeast High School. This is $7,171.65 from the District Activities Equipment Fund. And then K, approve annual renewal with Revise for district website support in the total amount of $5,800. This is from the General Fund of Technology. And then L, approve purchase exceeding $5,000 for the purchase of custodial supplies from the elementary in the amount of $2,680.02, and Torrington High School in the amount of $4,949.90 from Gloss Facility Solutions in the total amount of $7,629.92. This is the general fund and maintenance. The next is old business on number 2, letter B, consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 41-15, certified staff assignments and voluntary transfers. This is the second and final reading of that policy. Letter C, consider approval of proposed new district policy 3409, time distribution records for federal programs. This is also presented on second and final reading. D, consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 6145, district activities advisory council. And again, this is the second and final reading for that policy. Under new business, letter G, consider approval of purchase of work trailer for LFL high school construction project. This is the approval of a purchase of a 20-foot construction trailer funded by the Cutting Edge Grant. Letter H, consider approval of amendment to contract with Brooks Carson LLC for additional autism consultation services. This is from Title 11B funds, Title 11B funds. 6B funds, sorry. Is that supposed to be? Okay. 65,000, that makes more sense. For 65,000. Then letter I, consider approval of purchase of Ed Options Academy licenses from Edmentum. This is 24,000, and this would be from ESSER 2 funds. Letter J, consider approval of offering a hiring incentive for the Torrington High School administrative position. This would be a hiring incentive of $15,000 paid over 3 years, $5,000 per year at the start of the contract.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda with all of the addenda listed?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we'll now move down to item C, information and proposals. Number 1, the artwork in the boardroom is presented by Southeast Schools. And number 2,
School presentation also. Mr.
Oh.
Epler and his group are here.
oh, okay. And at this time, we'll have Mr. Epler, anybody else do their presentation.
Good evening, members of the board, district administration. Before I introduce the two Southeast staff members that are with me this evening, just want to take a minute to share with you, as I read through the board packet that is sent out each month to the board administrators, I just want to take a minute and give kudos to Mrs. Cates. Quite often, I know Mrs. Cates is the one whom we get frustrated with because she makes us toe the line. But as I read the WDE audit report, it reminds me of how well Mrs. Cates does her job. Wyoming Department of Education found one discrepancy. It was a student ADA, ADM membership, one student. We overreported their attendance by 1 day in the 2017-18 school year. You talked about finding a needle in a haystack. So kudos to Mrs. Cates. It was a good reminder to me, and I've shared that with others, that we do the work we do because people are finding discrepancies as minute as that. And in comparison to the other districts in the state, that was totally minute. So thank you. And tonight, board members, every year you approve, disapprove, discuss millions of dollars of expenditures. Some of those expenditures over the last year have been to support social emotional learning programs, support systems in our schools. And so I'm happy to have with us tonight two people that are very instrumental at Southeast Schools in both implementing and overseeing our social emotional learning program. I'm proud to introduce Amanda Fogel, the K-12 school counselor who heads that up, and Andrea Eisenbarth, who serves as a half-time behavior and social emotional interventionist in our building due to the availability of interventionist funds through CARES dollars. So I'm going to let them share with you a look at Southeast SEL.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us out tonight to be able to share that which we're doing here at Southeast this year. We have, you guys in front of you, I did hand out a copy of the Goshen County School District Social Emotional Learning Standards. We've had a team that's been working on those standards for the last few years, trying to hone and develop those and really try to work on coming up with a comprehensive system to help address those standards within our school district. So when we look at social emotional learning, we look at our first standard of interpersonal skills, self-awareness and self-management. So students be able to ability to regulate themselves. Then we look at interpersonal skills, so their ability to relate to the people around them and be able to have those appropriate interactions with others. And then lastly, we look at that ability to make some responsible decision making. So helping them build those skills in those three areas to really give us a well-rounded person, whole person by the time that they graduate, to be a good employee, to be a good friend, to be a good community member. So as part of that, we have some assessments that we use in order to kind of gauge where our students are at in those social emotional standards. And for the past 3 years, we have given the SSIS SEL, which is a heck of a mouthful, but it's an assessment that goes through and measures students' performance in those areas. And we can look at it from a teacher's perspective, rating a student. We can look at it a student's perspective, rating themselves. And then we can also dig into it and find a parent's perspective of how that student is functioning. And so this fall, we had teachers rate the students in the areas of social emotional learning. And what we found, the data that's up here includes both Southeast and LaGrange schools. And so we found that 84% of our students were proficient in those social emotional standards. We had 14% of our students, or like 13 of them, or 33 total, that were still emerging, which means that they're not quite there yet, but they're on their way to that level of proficiency. And then we had 4 students at Southeast and LaGrange who did rate at the at-risk level, where there is some intensive need to go in and do some intervention with those students. So We found some interesting information when we compared that between the student rating or the teacher rating. And then the 7-12, we had our students all go in and complete the individual student rating on themselves. And it was really interesting, the differences that came up with that, like how different kids feel about themselves than what the teachers perceive them as doing. So because when we looked at our data here with the teacher data for the SSIS, we found that teachers, our biggest need area was in self-management. Teachers saw that those kids really needed help with maintaining control. And I think a lot of it came from like focusing and doing work and being responsible and, kind of those things, using their time wisely, those skills in class from the outside. But then it was interesting because we went and when we did the ratings then, students overwhelmingly rated themselves poorly in relationship skills. In fact, like at our junior high school level, 34 of our 117 kids rated themselves like emerging or at risk. And we had substantially more at-risk ratings than we ever had on the teacher end of it. So the kids' perceptions of themselves and how they relate to others, it gave us a lot of information there, how they're seeing themselves. So we really have found this to be very useful. The rating that it gives us both at the teacher and the student level, it gives specific skills that we can use to intervene with students. So this is like a group look. So if we look overall at our kids in those areas, these are some specific units that we can go in and we could teach for intervention purposes with students. And so it's some really good data. Our student level of it, it gives a really nice comprehensive report that gives a lot of different intervention areas specific to that student and how they rated themselves and the needs that they had as well. So we're taking that information. We have a behavior PLC that meets weekly. And so we talk about students, we create some intervention plans for them. We're meeting individually and setting a goal with any of our students who came up as emerging or at risk on that student assessment, so that so that they hear us, or they know that we hear them, that they're struggling in that area, and how can we help support you in those areas. And then we have our whole group SEL instruction that we're completing. At the elementary level, we use a variety of resources from zones of regulation, second step, social thinking curriculum, things like that to help introduce these skills to our younger students. And then at the 7-12 level, we are using 7 Mindsets, which is a curriculum that you all approved earlier on this year. And I do appreciate that. It's been a really nice start for us to be able to go through and start addressing the social emotional needs of students there. So I'll let Andrea tell you a little bit about the flex groups, how we have that set up with our 7-12 groups. So.
What we did is, was it last spring? We had the kids list the staff members that they felt most comfortable with. And we took that information and then chunked them into groups. We have some teachers focusing on 7 through 9 grade students, and other teachers are focusing on 10 through 12 because the curriculum is different through the mindset that curriculum that we have. What we try to do is to group the students with a teacher that they felt at ease with, or that they felt like they had a relationship at least started with. And unfortunately, for some of the discussion purposes of the curriculum, that means that they're not necessarily comfortable with their peers. And we've kind of got some bugs to work out with that, but I think we're working through that. So when you see the curriculum, there has a lot of discussion prompts, but I think what we're finding is that some of these groups aren't comfortable sharing with their peers. And so at least I am with my group. I have one of those groups where everybody just sits there and stares at each other. We're journaling. And so we're turning those discussion prompts into a journaling exercise, and then I report out to the groups, okay, here's what you told me through your journals. So they are being held accountable. They do know they need to participate at least through that. The goal is that eventually they'll become more comfortable in sharing with their peers. But some of these discussion prompts are they're kind of gritty. And I have been really impressed with what they're willing to write down, because I know these students aren't comfortable sharing some of those experiences with their classmates. So I've been impressed with it so far.
And so we have it set up to where every Monday we have Mindset Monday. And when we went through, we could kind of determine which of the 7 mindsets it is that we wanted to start with. And based on that student data that we had, where relationship skills were the hardest ones for them, we started with the mindset that we are connected. So starting to build those relationships with the people around you, and how do we build those relationships and strengthen those? And so it's working very much on that social awareness, relationship skills standards within our social emotional standards that we're targeting. So this is an example of one of the lessons that they have within that 7 mindsets. It starts. They always have icebreakers. So again, trying to work into that group relationship building. They all start out with a quote. And I seem to get the lessons that I facilitated as well. I've also done some of these at the elementary level. You know, these quotes are great because it kind of gets their mind thinking that direction. You know, just making some really good connections to that bigger view of how this mindset fits in. So they give us a hook. So what does it mean to have empowering relationships, positive relationships? This one is focused specifically on developing those positive peers and those positive relationships with students around you. So, you know, why is it important for us to spend time with people that empower us and build us up versus those folks that break each other down and, you know, kind of provide that negative impact on those around them. So they have these great videos then as well. So like real connected videos, real life examples in order for kids to connect in on them. And I'll show you just a little bit of this one because I think it's a really fabulous example of exactly what we're trying to do here.
Cerebral palsy is more deserving the title. This is what it means to be kind from Fort Worth, Texas. Maximum care. First of all, how long have y'all been
Sorry.
I can vouch for the fact that the video is gone.
Yeah, there you go. But I have to unmute, Brian, is that?
Very hard to show on video. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's
Anyway, I will let you take my word for it. I'm happy to share these lessons with you. If any of you would like to be able to go in there and look at what these lessons comprise of, I could share any of these lessons with anyone that we need to. So, you know, I'd be happy to send a link out if you wanted to go in and view this on your own or dig more into it. But I do appreciate this. It's not a program, but the curriculum that they provide there on the 7 mindsets, because it provides parent newsletters that we can send home that relate to those topics. It gives us a whole host of different videos and activities. So if we find something on here that we're like, I don't think that's going to resonate with our kids, they have 20 different other videos that we can use to then make that connection with them that's more applicable to our kids. And so very nice and well-rounded.
It's very user-friendly.
Yeah, it's easy for me to just give it to teachers.
And it's easy for teachers to follow too. And I really do appreciate the fact that it has so many different options so that you can fit it to the needs of the group that you're working with. I'm going to show some of this discussion.
tell them just some examples of a little bit of the feedback. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically the way it works is after you show the video, well, or at least I guess I do it a little backwards because for this particular one, there are 4 different discussion prompts that we were given. So I shared that with the students first. Then we go back and watch the video. I said, so be looking for these things. These are the things I want you to pick out of the video. And then jot your thoughts down as you watch it. And so for example, the video is 2 young men from a large school in, I forget where it is, like 2,500 kids in the school. And the one young man is the quarterback of the football team. And the other young man is the manager of the equipment. And the quarterback is selected homecoming king. And the other individual was also running for the honor. And the one who won dropped to his knees and handed the crown to the other guy. Okay. So then they end up on a national TV program celebrating this act of generosity and kindness. And it really was pretty, they had it on video. It was really pretty cool. And in the end, they're telling their story. And at the end of the video, they're each awarded a scholarship of $10,000. So one of the questions then is how has their positive friendship enriched both of their lives? And of course, 2 or 3 kids said, well, they each got a lot of money out of it. But a lot of the kids went much deeper with that. Some of the comments that were shared with me were, makes them better people. It spreads positivity. Positive friendship works both ways. They each gain from that relationship. They were both kind to each other and they have fun because they can count on each other. Okay. The third question, though, I think is the most telling, or at least it's the one that I had to, you guys got it. The question was, why do people stay in relationships with those who are not seeking their best interests or lifting them up? Some of the kids put, they're lonely. Some of them said out of habit. Or there's no reason, they're just used to it. They have poor role models, so they don't know what a positive relationship is. Fear. Some people said that you just learn to ignore the bad and focus on the positive, or the dependent on those people for money or security. And I thought, for a 15, 16, 17-year-old student to come up with that was pretty profound. So I was very impressed. Remember, though, they're not sharing with each other. I'm the only one that got clued in on that so far with you. So,
yeah. So I think we're having really good results. I think the kids are buying into it, enjoying it. We've had a lot of good response to it. And again, I think it's something that you continue to build and get better and strengthen, but we're definitely looking forward to continue this throughout the year and keep building on that. So questions for us?
I do have one quick question.
Sure.
So, so I'm understanding that you have different videos that can show if one doesn't resonate with your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking it that curriculum is somewhat changeable to where if you're a 7th grader, in 2 years, you're not going to be receiving the same information, or you're going to be able to actually switch up, but they're not going to find themselves just kind of staying, right?
Yeah, very much so. So it's set up to have kind of a rolling presentation. So the first year you do, it's like just awareness and understanding. And then, so they have it set up. So for 3 years, like, so say 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, you would have completely different lessons those 3 years. Then you move into that high school curriculum, and there's 4 different sets of those. So a student would theoretically never be exposed to a repeat of a curriculum.
Well, that's the trouble with some of these curriculums. So that's why I was wondering. But yeah, at some point, I'd like to be able to actually
hear more about that?
Mhm.
So, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'll reach out to you.
Okay, yep, I'd be happy to share it with you guys.
Well, I apologize for trying to skip over you and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to number 2, the State of Wyoming Department of Audit Report by Business Manager Marcy Kate.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Upler gave me a very nice segue into this, so I appreciate it. What we have here is the Department of Audit each year does what they call either a blitz audit or every 4 years, districts are chosen for a full audit. They're a little bit behind because of COVID, but their last blitz audit was for the school year 17-18, and it focused on the school's reporting of average daily attendance and average daily membership. And what's entered into the system and what they were auditing off of is a function of a lot of different parties, and a lot of the individuals are responsible for this very nice report that we have here, from what the schools enter into, what Dustin Ludwig and SIS screens, and finally what I report. So there's a lot of parties involved, and this is definitely a team effort. But we do have one student, a single day membership that was incorrectly reported. So we have $307 that in the bill listing, there is an item there to approve a check to Wyoming Department of Audit, Wyoming Department of Education for $307. Are there any questions?
I was just up to say, I agree with, and actually, I would like to express how wonderful it is to be able to actually get these kind of reports, especially, and I know your job is, it's a task. So I personally would like to thank you as well for everything that you all do. Able to accomplish.
Okay, at this time, we'll move to item D, public forum. Please keep in mind there's a 5-minute time limit. And if you wish to speak, turn in the orange form to Lorraine. And we'll start with Mr. Bob Peterson, please.
This is just a last page of the budget from last year. And that's what I was going to be talking about. If I can get them through. I really did want to lick my fingers. My name is Bob Peterson. Thank you very much for the opportunity to let me speak. When I was going through the budget, I got to the last page on federal revenues, $6.4 million. And then I come down to expenditures, and I see the majority of that is put into instruction and instruction support. Is that COVID funds? I mean, you don't have to answer the question now, but my curiosity is why, when that budget figure on revenues runs about 1.8 to $2 million, all of a sudden bumps straight up to budgeted, projected for 2021, 2.8, but the budget is $6.4 million. And so that's my only question. And I don't quite understand why it would cost over $1 million for instruction support when it usually runs around $500,000 to $600,000. Just simple questions, because there seems like a tremendous amount of federal money. Just want to know if there's anything ear tagged or marked with that money that you must be doing to receive that type of income. And then the only other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was standard-based grading. At the last school board meeting, 6 principals, I believe 5 or 6 were here talking about standard-based grading. We spent a great deal of time trying to explain it. I was not able to understand at all how you arrive at anything with that. So I went and did some time, did a bunch of Googling and researching on standard-based training. Three of the areas that really are destroyed in the school systems are math scores, reading skills, and history on the standard-based grading. So I don't know if any of you looked into any of that as board members. I'm just curious, but it does not seem to work too well. And then their social skills fail very badly. And if any of you want any information, my telephone number's on there. Call me and I'll show you the sites to go to. And a lot of emphasis placed on the state of Kentucky. You might want to look and see how Kentucky ranks nationally with the standard-based training. It's not very good. My only question is, I think it was rushed into on this, and what bothers me too, you've only got a 4-point grade system, 1 to 4. Nobody fails. That sounds really good in high school, but when you get out of high school and college, what happens? Just a question. I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I'm just saying, have you looked into it? I think it really needs to be looked into. But if it may be a future board meeting, if you give me just a rough idea of why $5 million is instruction and 1.1 million is instruction support. I don't understand how that could be spent that way. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Rod Wagner.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Sussex, School Board Superintendent Kramer. Come before you tonight, and I'm compelled to come before you because of this book that has a solution. It's the book that our country was founded on. When the Pilgrims came to this country, everything they did was founded on this Bible, the most popular book, the most sold book that's ever been on display. The inalienable right and word of God. And so I come to be part of the solution instead of the problem, because we have a problem. In 1962, the Supreme Court ruled no prayer in school, throw God out of the government, get rid of him completely in this country. We've got a problem. Why do we have so many mass shootings in our schools? Why do we have so many depressed kids? Why are there so many kids committing suicide? It boggles your mind. And so I come to give you the answer to the problem found right here in this book. In the beginning, when there was education in this country, it was founded because Christians decided they wanted their children to be able to read, write, and do arithmetic so that they would know what this book said. Before, kings told them what to think and how to think and what to do. And these people came to this country for religious freedom. And this book was studied. The teacher made the lessons. The children went home and they set up candles, and the whole family sat around the table and read this word right here. It shaped everything that they did. Today, it's not happening. That's why we have so many depressed kids. That's why we have all the problems that we have in this country. And so I'm here to give you the answer tonight that comes from this book. I want to be part of the answer instead of part of the problem. And that answer is found in 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. And God says to the people, when I shut up the windows of heaven, when I send pestilence and famine and plagues upon this land, if my people who are called by my name, any of you here, many of you I know, claim to be Christians who are called by the name of Jesus Christ. If you will humble yourselves, seek my face, and ask forgiveness of your sins, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive your sins, and I will heal your land. I'm setting a challenge before each one of you who calls yourself a Christian tonight to do just that. Go home and read this. Let it sink in. Be part of the answer instead of the problem. Thank you.
Mr. John Cummings.
My name is John Cummings. Thank you for speaking this evening. I run senior sprints, in the senior games, senior Olympics, whatever they call them. And moved out here from Lincoln, Nebraska about 3.5 years ago. And I might be talking to the wrong people, but I really appreciate being able to run on this track next door. In Lincoln, they have, you know, everything's all cyclone fenced off and you can't really get a place to run and exercise. And so I really appreciate that and not having it locked up or closed off. So, and I notice a lot of other people out here whenever I'm running, there's people walking and exercising. I just really appreciate that. I want to tell you as a school board members, I don't know if it's your decision or not, but I really appreciate it. And haven't been beat yet in my age group, and I'm looking forward to next year. I run in the 80 to 84 group. And so go for it. Another thing, I just know you people are in education, and I would guess that you want to be up on current events and things that are going on. And so I don't know how many books you read. At my age, I read a couple a month, I suppose, try to keep informed what's going on. But this book, The Real Anthony Fauci, got to get it, read the last chapter first. It tells us that the whole smear that's been going on the last couple of years has been planned and written out. So it's documented to the nth degree. Good book. And Robert Kennedy Jr. wrote it. I think you'll know that he's no conservative poster boy. So good book. The other one's The Truth About Masks. Good book. So anyway, stay busy and catch up on things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Joshua Kruger, please.
Hi, I'm here once again to talk against the standard-based grading system that the school district has decided to use. Last month, there were several people that were here speaking in favor of this awful system. As part of their presentation, there were several slides that were used. I'd like to draw your attention to one in particular from that meeting. The slide that I'm in reference to can be seen in the recording of last month's meeting at timestamp 1 hour, 12 minutes and 45 seconds. I made it easy for you to view today because I asked that that printed out be handed to you. Now, I know that sometimes when things are presented, they can go by really fast and you might not be able to fully look at the data. So I'm asking you to please look at the slide that I printed out for you. I'd like to draw your attention to the A grade row and look from 2017 through 2020 and notice how much drop there has been in the A's in 2020 compared to previous years. I'll give you a bit to look at that. Now, also notice the previous years, even though they did have some drop, the percentage stayed within 2 points, unlike the drop in 2020 compared to 2019, which had a 14-point percentage drop. Now, I know that last year we were dealing with COVID, and we still are, but in 2020/2021 school year, we had in-person classes. So even though COVID may be responsible for some of the drop, I believe that most of this drop was caused more by the new grading system, which was started in the school year 2020-2021. I would encourage you to look at the slide a little more and notice that the missing assignment section for last year compared to the year before. It is interesting that towards the end of the school year 2019/2020, the district, like most schools, had to do all remote learning for several weeks. But what is interesting, even with that weird year, we still had less missing assignments in the school year of 2020/2021 when we started the new standards-based grading. I guess when you tell children that assignments don't count for grades, they might not turn them in. Next, I'd like to draw your attention to the F and D grades from last year compared to the previous years, and notice how they went up. Since we're limited on time, I would encourage you to look at the slide a little later on when you have time and look at the whole page. Since we just completed the first semester of this year and we can have some data from this year, I would encourage you to ask for that data and compare it to the previous year's first semester and see if we are heading in the right direction. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you will look into this further.
Ms. Rebecca Cochran.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Colhorn. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I can see you realize. You know, honestly, I spend most of Tuesdays before a board meeting trying to decide what to talk about, getting my thoughts together. And honestly, so far I have not, because there's so much to talk about in so little time. Do I talk about your special ed director that failed to give me my parental rights and is therefore subject to a lawsuit? Do I talk about the individual who was reported to bring a gun to the high school and parents were not notified? And the school board is trying to be more transparent with the parents and the community? No, I think not. I think what I want to talk about is the masks, because even though some individuals on this board has put quite a lot of time and effort into creating the protocol, I don't really believe you have a whole leg to stand on, because the CDC has recently reduced the amount of time that you need to be in quarantine from 14 to 10 to 5. Maybe next week it'll be none. We don't know. I don't think they know. And therefore, you don't have a standard platform, a base, a foundation in which to make an educated decision. You don't know, because that can change. It has changed, and I believe it will change again. Recently, I listened to a report from an individual who studied epidemiology, diseases, how they spread, how they change over time. This is a Harvard graduate. This is not some Cracker Jack box degreed individual. And he is of the opinion that if we can wait one more year, one calendar year, COVID will just be gone. There won't be any more variants. It will fall to the wayside as SARS did, as the bird flu has, and of all of these others, because you see, those were COVID too. COVID has been around for years. Way, way back in my grandpa's medicine cabinet, there's a little brown bottle that he doses his cattle with for COVID. South Dakota has been doing studies on cows and COVID and how to prevent it for years. They've done studies in deer. The deer population has COVID and they have the antibodies for it too. You can write this policy, and God bless you for taking the time to do it and doing the research and all of that. I know putting those kinds of things together is not easy. But the masking requirements have changed. What they know about COVID has changed. What they know about masks has changed. Cloth masks don't work. We said this 2 years ago. So therefore, if you're going to require the students to mask, are you going to supply the masks so that you can be sure that they're wearing the correct ones? So that they're not bringing cloth masks from home? Those that they have found to be ineffective, i.e. useless. Is the school district going to provide that? Because you're the ones requiring that they wear them. I don't require my children to wear them. Therefore, I do not feel the need to supply my children with those. These are all things you need to consider before you enact that policy. Can you foolproof that? Can you make it so that if the CDC changes their guidelines tomorrow, that you're still okay with it? That your policy is still in line with what they have to say? No, you can't. The Supreme Court is right now is trying to make a decision on the vaccine mandates. And a vaccine mandate, in my opinion, is the same as a mask mandate. It's not a law. I don't have to. My children don't have to. Now, recently I was in Aurora at the Down Syndrome Center. They asked us to put a mask on and I did. Why? I had recently gotten over a cold. I still have the cough. There are very fragile individuals there. I do not want to get them sick. That is an adult responsible thing to do. There is no reason to mask healthy children. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, move down to item E, recommended actions. Number one, the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any members wish to pull?
Chairman, if I may just remind that there are 3 items from the addendum that are also part of that consent agenda, just to make sure that everybody realizes that we would be approving those 3 items in addition if they are not pulled.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll move down to number 2, old business. Item A, consider approval of proposed revisions to the Goshen County School District's school level close contact quarantine protocol. The recommendation is to approve the proposed revisions to the Goshen County School District 1 school level close contact quarantine protocol as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Can we have some discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion?
So on option 2, can I get clarification of that paragraph?
The very first bullet there on option 2.
Yes.
So a close contact not showing signs or symptoms wears a mask and completes COVID-19 PCR test on or after day 5 and continues to work, attend school, or attend school-related functions with a mask until day 5 and a negative test result is received. What that's stating is that they would go on their first days 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, would wear a face covering. Then on day 5 would be able to test. Then after day 5 with a negative test would be allowed to attend school or any other events, not wearing a mask with a negative PCR test.
Okay. I guess, is there any way that we can just, I mean, and maybe it's just me, but I'm finding, okay, so day 5, we're talking same day 5, right? Okay, so it's days, but the negative test results would not be found out on day 5.
It can be with a rapid PCR test.
And that would only, and if they choose not to get that, then they fall to
Option 1.
option 1. And you think that people are understanding of that, or how's that going to?
We have had a number, let me just bring up my numbers numbers real quick. Approximately we have had a number of close contacts who have decided to test. We have, out of the ones that we've talked about, it has not been a large number, but there have been a total of 21 students testing on day 5 or after, if they've been a school level close contact. Now that has been since the implementation on November 1. So there are not a large amount, but there is in some cases too, if it depends on where the date of exposure falls. Because in some cases, if it day 5, for instance, falls on Friday and they're already to day 8 when they return, it just makes sense rather than going and getting testing that they don't go further to get that testing and not have to wear the mask until day 10. It kind of depends on the familiarity. If other families have tested before, that seems to be pretty common, that if they've tested before, there's not a hesitation to test, but if a family hasn't tested in the past, most likely there's a test hesitation, which is understandable.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Letter B, consider approval of proposed revisions to district part policy 4115, certified staff assignments and voluntary transfers as presented on second and final reading. The recommendation is to approve the proposed revisions to district policy 4115 as presented on the second and final reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving district revisions to district policy 4115, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Letter C, consider approval of proposed new district policy 3409, time distribution records for federal programs as presented on second and final reading. The recommendation is to approve proposed new district policy 3409 as presented on second and final reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving new district policy 3409, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Letter D, consider approval of proposed revisions to district policy 6145, district activities advisory council as presented on second and final reading. The recommendation is to approve the proposed revisions to district policy 6145 as presented on second and final reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving proposed revisions to district policy 6145, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll move on to number 3, new business. Letter A, consider approval of offering a contract to Ryan Kramer as superintendent of Goshen County School District number 1. The recommendation is to approve offering a contract to Mr. Kramer for the 2022, 2023, and 2023, 2024 school years. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving, offering a contract to Ryan Kramer, the superintendent of Goshen County School District for the 2022, 2023, and 2023-2024 school years, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Letter B, appoint Goshen County Recreation Board members for 2022. Chairman Miller has contacted all current members who have indicated they will continue to serve on the board and have their terms renewed. The proposed 2022 rotation is Carrie Bullington, first year of a 5-year term, Carlos Saucedo, second year of a 5-year term, Dylan Hager, third year of a 5-year term, Steve Bagler, fourth year of a 5-year term, and Tim Keeper, fifth year of a 5-year term. The recommendation is to consider approval of the appointments and rotation of the Goshen County Recreation Board members for 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of appointing the members listed to the Goshen County Recreation Board for 2022, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Letter C, consider approval of purchase of K-5 music instruction materials from West Music. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of game plan music instructional materials from West Music for District K-5 students in the total amount of $16,340.88. And it's funded through the closed literacy grant. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor of considering or of approving the purchase of K-5 music instruction materials from West Music, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Letter D, consider approval of purchase of new computers for building library checkout systems. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of 8 new computers related equipment for building library checkout systems from Sterling in the total amount of $10,432. This is funded through the closed literacy grant. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the purchase of new computers for building library checkout systems in the amount of $10,432, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Letter E, consider approval of purchase of document cameras and sound systems. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of 30 Aver Visu document cameras and 30 Red Cat sound systems for district classrooms from Troxel in the total amount of $61,241.40. This is funded through the WVE Digital Learning Grant. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the purchase of document cameras and sound systems in the amount of $61,241.40, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? G, consider approval of purchase of work trailer for Lingo Fort Laramie High School construction project. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of a 20-foot construction trailer for the Lingo Fort Laramie High School vocational construction project from Wyoming Trailers in the total amount of $11,400. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I actually just was curious about this one. Is there? What does this trailer, I guess, essentially look like? And what are we getting for the 11,400?
Okay. So what we have is that when we presented that grant, we talked about that opportunity to have, it's an enclosed trailer. And so then what they'll do is actually design that trailer to have in it the tools, and it's an ability to go on site. So what they do is be able to take everything from what they're currently at in that location to different sites and then work on those pieces as they're there. It's kind of integrated like a almost private business, like what we've seen commonly with many of the contractors having their own enclosed trailer, so they don't have to leave things on site. They can take them back with them. It's to help students realize and design what a enclosed trailer would look like and how it can be actually curtailed to different work sites and what those needs kind of entail as they work through a job or an activity. It also gives them the possibility of working with some of our local contractors as they can go out and actually see and be on a job, as opposed to trying to create different problems or situations they can get on-site training through this activity.
So does that come with any tools, or is that just the trailer?
I'd have to look back at the grant itself and how it was written. In that cutting edge grant, I believe it also had allocations for tools and other things involved in that.
Is there any other discussion? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of approving the purchase of a work trailer for Lingo Fort Laramie High School construction project, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So I apologize, I skipped over F. We're gonna move back to that right now. So once again, I'm sorry. Item F is consider approval of contracting with Institute for Multisensory Education for additional staff development. The recommendation is to approve contracting with IMSE for an additional trainer to provide Orton Gillingham staff development January through March 2022 in the total amount of $22,500 funded through the CLSD Literacy Mini Grant. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have a question, because in this agreement, I noticed, I read through the COVID-19 protocol and in-person trainings, I guess statement. It does mention that if it was to occur, that, you know, they have to actually, we have break out of COVID, that we could reschedule these trainings. Do we need to find it? I don't find a statement in here as to, does it have to be done within within this year? Or if it was to be postponed, could it carry into next year? I mean, how does that work?
I'm going to see if Trina can be available here in one moment. I believe it's within a certain time frame, whether that be 180 days. But let me check here. Is that yours, Jeff? Yeah. Oh, sorry. I apologize, Jeff. If you could identify that.
So these are additional sessions that we're purchasing. They're running through March. So we'd still have April and May that we could reschedule these for.
Okay.
And with the funding we're using for this, which is the literacy mini grant, we have to have those funds expended by the end of June. We are working on trying to get an amendment from the state that allows us, if we have extra money, to carry it into the larger 3-year grant that we're going to be submitting. And so we just don't have an answer yet on it. We have that.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving contracting with the Institute for Multisensory Education for additional staff development in the amount of $22,500, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, now we'll go to H. Consider approval of amendment to contract with Brooke Carson LLC for additional autism consultation services. The recommendation is to approve the amended contract with Brooke Carson LLC to provide an additional $25,000 in autism consulting services through June 30th, 2022, for a total amended contract amount of $65,000, funded through Title 6B funds. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of approving an amendment to the contract with Brooke Carson LLC for additional autism consultation services in the amount of $65,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Consider approval of purchase of Ed Options Academy licenses from Edmonton. Recommendation, approve the purchase of 16 Ed Options Academy student licenses for the first semester in the total amount of $24,000. ESSER 2 funds. What funds? Do I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the purchase of Ed Options Academy licenses from Edmonton in the amount of $24,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, item J, consider approval of offering a hiring incentive for the Torrington High School administrative position. The recommendation is to approve offering a hiring incentive of $15,000 payable over 3 years, $5,000 per year at the start of the contract year for the current open position of Torrington High School principal, and will also apply to internal candidates, and it will be funded through the general fund. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may. So when our opening, we closed that opening on January 1st, and we did have a pool of applicants. After reviewing that pool of applicants, there are some potential candidates from that position. In that review, I would be much more comfortable if we had a larger pool of applicants and having them participate in those interviews. The process for the interview was scheduled to take place next week with a group of parents that have been invited to take part, and then the leadership committee from THS, and then another committee of administrators and board members. Through that process, we would go through the hiring of that individual for the position. When I discussed this option with Chairman Miller, we looked at certain amounts that might incentivize individuals to increase that pool of applicants, because we do know that that is an extremely important position to fill within the district and has had quite a bit of turnover. And as we discussed and looked at options along with Ms. Cates regarding what was a reasonable amount for expenditures, and also what would be something that would be eye-catching to possible interviewees who may have experience in this type of system, in a high school system, to put them in place to hopefully then have a longer retention piece of the years. And that is the goal for this position, is to kind of get the best applicant we possibly can. And so we want to make it eye-catching. And so that's entails why the amount matches that. This would also be something that can fall under the all ARP ESSER fund expenditures for the incentivizing of new individuals to the district.
So are you going to re-advertise that position and put off interviewing?
So that would be correct. What we do is if this is approved, we would post this again tomorrow with a closure date of January 26th. And then take a look on January 26th as to the applicant pool and then make adjustments to interview the applicant pool as we see on that date.
How are the parents chosen?
So what I did is I asked the secretaries to give me a list of parents varying in grade levels, varying also in academic needs, varying in extracurricular activities, trying to get a cross-reference group to make sure that as many possible groups were included in this process. And that might be ones that are in only one activity or no activities. And so we have that cross-section of individuals. There are ones that I'm going to have to reach out to because I've not had a reply. What that initial invitation was done was via email. And so we'll kind of work on making sure there's a phone contact in addition to that email.
Thank you.
I have the same quick question about who's part of the student group, the leadership group?
The teachers are the leadership team. And then the students, I'm going to have a couple of leadership members give a tour to those individual applicants. And so they'd have an opportunity to walk them through the building and it won't be a structured interview process with the students, but they would have an opportunity then to provide and meet that individual or that applicant.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of offering a hiring incentive for the Torrington High School administrative position in the amount of $15,000 payable over 3 years, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We will move on now to number 4, topics for discussion. Is there anything the board wishes to discuss? Okay, letter F, future meetings. There will be a board work session on Monday, January 24th, 2022 at 5 p.m. To continue leadership governance training with Dr. Rod Kessler from WSBA. The WSBA Winter Board Development Workshops will be in Casper at the Ramkota Hotel on Saturday, January 29th, 2022. And our next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, February 8th, 2022 at 7 p.m. With that, we'll go to letter G and superintendent's report.
First item that I'll share is our average daily membership. And this is a report that you're familiar with in regards to what we've been seeing for the past month. 3 different columns. First column is a comparison not of the cohort group, but in the previous year. So for instance, 9th grade at Lingo Fort Laramie had 19 students, 19.13 students. And then this average daily membership was 27.77. Now that is dark green because that was more than 5 students larger than the previous group. The difference here in this next one is the cohort group. So in the previous year, there were 29 students in that cohort group. And then in this year, there were 27. So the reason for the yellow would be that those number of students is less than that previous year. Then the last column is in reference to last month. And the same holds true. If it is 5 above, it is the dark green. If it's between 0 and 4.9, it is the light green. If it is between negative 0.001 and negative 4.9, it would be a yellow, and anything that has a larger loss than 5 students is in red. As you can see from the previous month, so as we compare December in this column to November, we have a lot of green, very few yellows, And we do not have any red. As I move down through here, you can see the cohort group is of course not the best comparator. The non-cohort group is not the best comparison, obviously. Some areas that are a little concerning, but I want to emphasize also the one area here with Lincoln Elementary, we've talked about that having a lower number than that previous cohort group. The THS one is a little bit interesting to take a look because it is having to do with the success of PRS. When we take a look at the number of students that we've increased, we've actually doubled the size of students in PRS. And so when you look at the total number of students and you take 10 students and add that to the THS total last year during December, it was about 329. As you can see, in comparison to the previous year, that would have been up and then right at that previous year. If we do the same here and we take 22 for PRS and put those on the 309, again, we have actually an increase there, even though it is sitting in the red. And so that can kind of be deceiving as we look at numbers. Also, if you remember last month, how our attendance data is tied to that average daily membership is important also, and is reflected in the funding. Much better attendance rates during the month of December in comparison to the month of November. Then also what I wanted to kind of lay out and give some information on last week, as many of you are familiar with, last Wednesday, the school district had its first virtual snow day. And then also on Thursday, due to road closures, Southeast and LaGrange also did a second virtual day. And I wanted to share some information and data, and this is just kind of a general broad overview, and I do have some more specific data that would kind of add some more information if it's looking at grade spans, but I did find this very interesting. So to put it in perspective, we haven't had a snow makeup day since May of 2019. And so that's kind of a little bit of a rougher comparison when you look at that. But in May of 2019, and these were 3 snow days that were made up at the end of the regular scheduled school year. And so it was the 23rd of May and the 24th of May. So this percentage here, I'm going to just get a little bit, see if I can give us a little bit more. There we go. As you can see, so this is that 23rd. 16.6% of students in the district were absent on that day. Then the 24th, 16.86. Then on the 28th, which was the Monday, then we had 27.64% of students absent. Then as we move down here, this is the date where we had a late start on a Friday in December. So this was December 10th of this year, where we did have in-person school, but it was a late start on a Friday. We had 22.35% of students absent on that date. Then this is a date to reference. This would have been last Tuesday. So this was a regular school day, regular school schedule. 9.84% of students were absent. Then as we move towards that Wednesday of that week, and we had our first snow virtual day, we had 14.19% of our students absent. Then the next day we had a late start for Torrington and for all Torrington schools and all Lingo Fort Laramie schools, while LaGrange and Yoder Southeast schools were in virtual still. We had 11.99% of our students absent. Then on that Friday, we were back to a regular schedule. And on that Friday, we had 10.27 students on a regular school day following those days. So just some data for you to kind of have. I know as you have had different questions, different comments. I just greatly appreciate our teachers and students being able to kind of adjust to those things. It is, that is probably one of the hardest pieces of being a superintendent, is making that decision. And it's definitely a lot of thought process goes in to that, along with the transportation director's expertise, other administrators, and of course, Ms. Cates helping and making that decision, because it is very challenging to kind of think about that and know the impact that those decisions have on each and every family. If you want to ask me after the meeting, I can certainly answer that. Okay, any questions from the board members? Then we have our Y-top data. And then this month, we were going to talk about the 7th and 8th grade Y-top data from last spring. So as we look here again, so again, it's a color coded. I'm just going to scroll back up to the top to remind everybody what the color coding means. If it's all green, 2021 was the highest of the last 3 years. If it's in yellow, the 2021 scores were higher than one of the last 2 years. If it's blue, this would be higher than the previous time the students, this group took the assessment. And if it is red, it is the lowest of the last 3 years. So as we scroll down, you can see, then I forgot to tell you what the second column is, the state average on that right. And so that will tell us if we are above the state average. So really, first piece that we look at is that state average. State average was 47% of students were proficient in math in 7th grade. As you can see, our 7th grade students exceeded the state average last year and had exceeded the year before. And so this is kind of interesting to take a look. This 48.4, the reason it is in yellow is obviously because it is higher than one of the previous years. Then in English language, the state average being 53.3. Even though you see red here, it is interesting to take a look because every one of those years has exceeded the state average. And so it kind of gives an indication that yes, we always want to continue to do better than the previous year. It's important data to take a look at, but it also is very important to take a look at our cohort in comparison across the state, which that's our first indicator, which we are in green there. Then as we move towards 8th grade math, again, we are in green, exceeding the state average. And as you can see in significant areas all across math in 8th grade. And then there is some variance between the years, but still exceeding that state average. Then as English language, you can see again, exceeding the state average. This was higher, this last year was higher than one of the previous years, but still again, exceeding the state average. And then finally, in the area of science for 8th grade, exceeding the state average, one of our lower years in that area on 8th grade, but again, want to emphasize exceeding all of the state average on those indicators. And so there's a lot of success happening within those two grade spans, always striving to improve, but a lot of things to be very proud of at the district level and across the district in regards to 7th and 8th grade content on the Y-top and how we did last spring. Then also, I want to go in and just share again the ARP ESSER survey that we talked about last month in our regular board meeting is still available on the school website. So when you're on the school website, this is the front page here, right in this big area right here is the Goshen County School District ARP ESSER survey. The video link to last month's presentation of that survey, and then the link to complete that survey. So please, if you have an opportunity, please visit our school website, click on the survey. We have had approximately 50 people complete the survey. We appreciate the time that is spent on there and also their input. We will be working on the initial component of that grant application over the next couple of weeks. The final piece of that is completed in March. And that's a multiple year grant and a significant amount of dollars to be expended at the district level. And then my final thing, the board members did see that trustee Schmick has submitted his resignation. Trustee Schmick has done a wonderful job as a trustee in the district. We appreciate his time that he spent with us. He was going to plan on being part of this meeting, but because of their move happening a little quicker than what was anticipated, he wanted to make sure that there was no impression that he had anything or any chance where people would interpret his decisions this evening in a negative context as making that decision. And so he has submitted his resignation this evening. We will take action on that on the work session on Monday, January 24th. That will be just the action and acceptance of that. The other pieces that will be entailed through the interview process and the application process of adding a new board member will take part separately from that. But there is a time period in which we need to take action to accept that. But we will set alternative dates in which we will accept a new applicant or a new member of the board of trustees. And that's all I have, unless anyone has any other additional questions.
With that, we are adjourned.